The angelic sentinel fell to her knees violently, a stream of crimson blood still luminous against her fading radiance pooled on the frozen dark stone. She was a Shard of Selune, one of only 7 such celestial variants of the heavenly planetar angel in existence, born from the ascension of the goddess's most faithful, each bound to serve as expressions of the Moon Maiden's grace. Uniquely distinguished by pale skin that glimmered with a pearly iridescence and long flowing hair trailing in soft blue light, a divine beauty forged from equal parts sacred moonlight and celestial fire. They are the lunar goddess's elite vanguard, revered holy messengers bringing the light of hope and blessing from the gates of the moon into the deepest shadows of the mortal world. But on this day, circa 1171 Dale Reckoning, that light had dimmed in the shadows of Vanrakdoom. 2 of Selune's most sacred celestial servants had just fallen into the hands of her sister. On hands and knees, the sentinel began to open her eyes as the impact of her fall to the icy stone jarred awareness into her once more. Her body pitched forward, but bindings born from the plane of shadow wrapped around her wrists, pulled tight, securing her restraint. The shadows remained coiled around her throat, arms, and wings. Her once shining armor had been dulled by battle, the silver metal torn open across one shoulder. Blood trickled out from beneath it, gathered in slow crimson drops on the cold stone. Her once pristine wings now charred and stained, their regality lost as they hung broken and wet against her back. The vast crypt still carried the weight and scars of divine magic spent. The remnants of a heavenly greatsword lie useless and far out of reach in the shadows, and scorch marks of searing moonfire marred the black stone pillars. She had fought. They both had. The Sentinel's memory of their capture came only in disjointed fragments of blinding radiance, suffocating shadow, and pain. Nothing so clear to explain how they had been dragged so far beneath the world, only the certainty that neither had surrendered willingly. Miles of Undermountain pressed down upon them. The Sentinel slowly lifted her head. She knelt beside a massive block of tarnished silver at the center of the chamber. Beyond it lay a frozen Gothic crypt of black stone, its ceiling lost somewhere above the reach of her fading light. Tall pillars framed alcoves filled with deeper darkness. Nothing living stirred beyond the servants approaching in the distance. The crypt held the stillness of a place prepared long ago for this exact blasphemy. Vanrakdoom, she recalled. They found themselves in the deepest sanctum of a temple raised to Selune's sibling rival and ancient enemy, the Dark Lady of Loss, Shar. Her unholy symbol, a black disk eclipsed in purple, had been carved into the walls, repeated until the entire chamber felt consecrated through her hatred. Across the dais, the sentinel gazed at her sister Shard, still hanging as she was only moments earlier between 2 pillars of identical black stone. She had served Selune through a gentler calling, a celestial guide. She descended onto the material plane to find travelers who had lost the road, to lead those hunted by evil towards safety, and to carry moonlight into dark places where no path could be seen. Her pale sapphire eyes had once shimmered with quiet certainty. Now they were barely open. The angelic guide's arms had been drawn above, wings forced behind her. Singed and crimson-stained, the remaining feathers and a blackened band of flesh marked where shadows bound her arms. The sentinel reached out to her through the telepathic bond they shared. "Sister." The guide's head moved weakly. "Stay with me. Keep your eyes on me." Recognition flickered in the guide's gaze, the only sign that defeat, pain, and corruption had not yet taken her completely. There were no visible forms in the crypt, but they both knew Shar's eyes were upon them. She filled every space their fading light could not reach. The Lady of Loss watched with the patience of a goddess who had long waited to claim something Selune loved. Only moments later, the iron and stone doors at the chamber's far end opened. Dark-robed servants entered. Between them, suspended by thick iron chains, they carried a black marble sarcophagus toward the massive silver plinth between them. The lid had not yet been placed. Inside lay a pile of shattered bones. A staff rested across the calcified remains. Its aura drank in the chamber's fading light. The sentinel recognized the profane artifact before she understood anything else. The shadow staff of Gorothir, an unholy relic thought destroyed centuries ago by an arch-wizard who sacrificed his life for the noble act. Only then did she realize whose bones lay beneath it. Gorothir was a nefarious Netherese high priest of Shar's church and a tyrant who used faith to justify his indulgence in the continued orgy of violence and conquest. Gone for centuries, yet still honored by those who considered such evil a form of devotion. The cruel deeds of Shar's dark prophet of the night had been preserved in the oldest records of Selune's church, passed down as a warning following Netheral's fall. The Night of Dark Fire in 446 DR had ended his reign, yet the unholy relic before her was now whole. What the shards did not know was that a betrayer to Selune, Lord Vanrak Moonstar, had recovered and interred Gorothir's remains here in Vanrakdoom. Shar had restored the staff as his reward. The sentinel turned toward the tarnished silver plinth beside her. She could still make out Selune's holy symbol, a crescent moon and 7 stars that had originally been carved into the altar's side. Shar's symbol had now been cut across it. Despite the defacement, the Selunite mark remained, still present, and to the sentinel, still sacred. She gathered what remained of her strength. Fighting against the suffocating threads of the shadow weave that permeated this crypt, she forced a blood-stained hand against the frozen silver and called upon the Moon Maiden with a desperate prayer. Cold, white moonfire erupted from the sentinel's palm. It surged across the tarnished metal in brilliant silver veins, reaching the hanging guide and shrouding the sister shard in a pale healing glow. For one hopeful, defiant breath, Selune's crescent burned fiercely through Shar's unholy mark. Across the chamber, the guide's sapphire eyes lit with renewed determination, looking past the crypt rather than at it, searching for some route of escape the sentinel could not see. She then closed her eyes tightly as the radiance of her remaining divine power spilled forth onto the floor in thin silver threads, each searching the seams between stones to reach beyond the chamber. The secrets of Vanrakdoom unfolded inside her mind, every door, passage, ward, and hidden threshold revealed at once. She followed them all, searching for the one path Shar may have failed to close. Divinity obeyed her call, but not her will. The holy gift that had once led the lost towards safety now bent to the corruption of shadow as every silver trail turned inward toward the very evil she was trying to escape. A tremor passed through their sacred bond.
I cannot find the path.
The sentinel felt the fear beneath the guide's words. Desperate, the guide strained against her bindings with all her remaining strength. One pillar cracked, and for a heartbeat her wings drew forward and her feet almost touched the floor. Then Shar answered, as if mocking her defiance. Undulating waves of absolute blackness cascaded over the chamber. The guide's silver threads faded, instantly extinguished, vanished beneath the shadow weave. The sentinel tried to hold on to Selune's power, but her silver flame too was suffocated as an evil presence, cold, wet, and foul, began pulling at her soul. For the first time since her divine ascension, the sentinel felt power flow inside her that she knew was no longer hers. The 2 planetar angels tried to pray together for Selune's aid, but the profanity of Vanrakdoom's evil swallowed every syllable. Shar's unholy symbol deepened until it became a large void from a place without light. Within, the silhouette of the dark goddess slowly took shape. It was but a fraction of Shar's attention, yet it carried enough form and presence to make the 2 shards understand insignificance. The gaze of the dark goddess fell upon the defeated Celestials, though her words took aim at her hated sibling. She spoke with a sinister but quiet voice that still carried as though all other sounds in the world had now been silenced.
Look upon your faithful daughters, sister mine. What comfort will you offer them now? Your sentinel once stood as a shield against shadow. Now she will forever stand in its defense. Your guide once opened paths of hope. Now every road she finds will end in despair. They will remember your light, my treacherous twin, but their hands will preserve my darkness. Let that be the divine eternity you promised them.
As Gorothir's tomb began to descend between the fading shards of the Moon Maiden, despair set in with the realization of their fate. Now the prophet's tomb would rest upon Selune's stolen and desecrated altar, and 2 of her own celestial servants would be forced to protect it. Death would have been far kinder. As the black marble tomb settled onto the cold, tarnished silver, a corruption erupted from the altar, its foul magic surging into the shards, coursing through bone and soul, consuming the channels through which Selune's grace had once flowed, now preparing each to become that which they despised most. Every trace of their celestial beauty was collapsing into decay. The Sentinel's pale skin blistered and split as black and gray rot set in. Shar's dark corruption moved beneath as strips of flesh were torn from her arms. Her fingers lengthened as prismatic nails thickened into terrible black hooked claws. She watched in horror as her once majestic wings were transformed. The feathers became charred, blackened, and then fell to the ground, replaced with the vile rod of taut and tattered skin. The Sentinel screamed in agony. Her voice struck the crypt with the familiar voice of a command she once held, but then suddenly broke halfway through, dragged downward into a thick and muddy sound she no longer recognized as her own. The cry that answered from the other side of the tomb was equally heartbreaking. What began in the guide's celestial voice of authority ended as something slurred and wet. The guide called out through the telepathic bond. The corruption had saturated the celestial connection, touching thoughts and memories no physical restraint could have reached. Yet the tenuous mental tether between them remained ever fragile. But for the moment, it was theirs, and the guide would offer her sentinel sister some last measure of comfort. She carried no promise of escape, and no hope she could not honestly give. She brought only the same certainty that had guided frightened mortals through darkness long before this night. The Sentinel could feel Shar's defilement of command closing around what remained of her thoughts. The guide could not lead her out of this crypt, but she could choose where their minds would be when the end came. The guide filled their bond as she recited a Selunite prayer.
The shadow has torn what your hands once spun. Our feathers are ash, our grace now undone.
The words passed softly through the bond, but as the unholy corruption took form, the celestial connection abruptly snapped, muting its voice, drowned in a corrupting tide of undeath. Undeterred, together with the final remnants of divinity, they spoke aloud the last lines, a direct plea to the Moon Maiden.
Yet look to the dark, where the cold shadows creep. The light of Moon Mother is ours still to keep.
For one last moment, they were not what they were about to become. They were daughters of Selune, praying together as a final supplication of their devotion against the encroaching dark. And then all went black. The black marble lid closed to seal Gorothir's bones and the restored shadow staff as the Sharite servants withdrew from the prophet's crypt. The bindings released the horrors that now replaced those celestial shards. In their place, rising from columns of putrid steam, emerged 2 very different types of angels, neither graceful nor divine. Towering over 9 feet tall, these grim mockeries of the heavens lumbered forward, their once regal wings now ragged and rotting. The once pale, radiant skin of the celestial shards now transformed into a deliquescent mass of leprous, decomposing flesh as liquefied black filth pooled beneath their new, repulsive forms. They moved obediently to take their place in the shadows behind the desecrated altar of the Moon Maiden to forever stand guard over the tomb of Gorothir. In the corrupted depths of Vanrakdoom, the dark goddess Shar had fashioned perhaps the most vile mockery of the heavens, Angels of Decay. Vanrakdoom was not the only origin the lore would give them, but it may have been the cruelest. They exist not as celestials who had forgotten the light, but as harbingers of rot, forever condemned to remember it. The published canonical lore of this tragic tale I just shared leaves us with only blank pages regarding details on how Selune's angelic shards were captured, the exact methods of their corruption by Shar, or how much of their former selves actually remained trapped in their repulsive, undead shells. Where the canon provides answers, my story preserves it. However, where the record falls silent and leaves gaps, I've tried to provide plausible story lore elements without conflict to any established lore. But this story is only the beginning and chronicled only a single genesis of the Angel of Decay. In the companion deep dive to follow, we will examine this rare creature of undeath from its first appearance in Libris Mortis through its 4E abyssal birth and detail all facets of its history and lore in between. This will include asking and answering the question modern lore has never answered: what happened to them? If you enjoy my work, maybe consider hyping and doing all of the things. Links below. I hope you will join me on the next one. Until then, remember that Vanrakdoom gave us 2 rotting angels, but neither was the first. Take care, my friends.